was recording the intro to our next chapter of Dorian, and yeah, the stream just dropped. So that's a case in point example of what I was referring to. Thank you so much for your patience and flexibility with me during this time. But yeah, my stream quality is not going to be as good until I'm put in the position of being able to move and or improve the speed of my internet. Twitch is very contingent upon the strength and speed of my internet, and my internet right now is just not fast enough to support the best quality streams. So for that reason, I'm sorry. Thanks for bearing with me. I hope you've all been enjoying these reading series. We're about halfway through the book now, and I'm going to continuously think about different types of streaming options that could work, different ideas for the stream. Yeah. So thank you for watching, and thank you for the support. Okay. So without further ado, let's dive in. I'm going to angle my camera down a little bit. There. Hopefully my stream stays up. It's, yeah, frustrating when I have to restart my stream from like random drops. These aren't the good kind of drops. If and when, like, I see a lot of streamers right now are streaming Jump King. That is something that I could try on Stormer Show. I do already have Celeste. I haven't yet beaten it. I think I'm on the 4th or 5th chapter. I could try either or both of those games if and particularly when my internet speed improves. So if that's something that you'd like to see, let me know. Drop a suggestion or shoot me a whisper saying, "Hey Stormer Show," or "Hey Stormer, we'd like to see you playing Jump King." And I'll be like, okay, right, let me give it a shot. Okay, but anyways, last time on the picture of Dorian Gray, we had the opportunity to see the first interaction between Lord Henry, Basil, and Sybil. They all, as a company, went to see Sybil's play for the first time. As a quick recap, when they went, she didn't deliver her best performance. And as she explains to Dorian backstage, that's because her love and affection for Dorian has taken the place of her passion for acting. So she's like, I don't need to put my all into my art form anymore because I've got this love for you, Dorian. And Dorian, in response, says, you know, that's basically why I fell in love with you in the first place, was because of your acting ability. Now that I've seen that you no longer have that passion, that energy, that vibrance for acting, now it's the case I don't feel the same way about you anymore. And Sybil's very broken up about it. She's still very much in love with Dorian. And Dorian's perhaps rather coldly leaves Sybil. He takes a look at the portrait that Basil painted of him, and the portrait itself has changed to reflect the cruelty that he has visited upon Sybil, which I remarked yesterday was rather spooky, kind of scary in a way. It's like the whole concept of the painting changing, the picture changing. It's like, yeah, that happened to Dorian. The actual expression on the painting changed to reflect what was happening outside of the painting. Okay. We're in chapter 8 now, chapter 8. And thank you for joining me with this series. I'd also like any and all suggestions for different books you guys would like me to try. I could either buy the books or use Kindle. After I finish with Dorian, I may start doing Sapiens on stream. That's another idea I can try. So if that's something you'd like to see, please let me know. I'm always considering different ideas and options for the stream and show. Okay. Chapter 8. It was long past noon when he awoke. His valet had crept several times on tiptoe into the room to see if he was stirring, and had wondered what made his young master sleep so late. Finally his bell sounded, and Victor came in softly with a cup of tea and a pile of letters on a small tray of old Sevres. Sevres are French porcelain, often richly decorated with pastoral scenes. I wonder if I can find some visual reference for you all. Hang on. If so, that could be a good reference. Hold on. Okay, I think I've got a few examples pulled up. Hold on. It's like those little plates, those little cups. You guys can probably see them. It's like they have, yeah, it's like kind of like they're china, like actual pieces of pottery, pieces of pots that have little like designs on them. Be right back, guys. I need to use a bathroom. Okay, I'm back. Alright, yeah. He's got... Yeah, so the butler... Yeah, his servant, butler, valet, he brings in the assortment. It's colored... I think it's kind of cool. I think that those are considered antiques. That style plate, Sevres, S-E-V-R-E-S. Yeah, it's like you might see them in like a fine china shop or an antique shop, or in your grandma's house. My grandparents have already passed away, so yeah, pottery of this style and kind can't be found here. Yeah, it's almost like it's kind of rare Like, you might be able to find it in some kinds of shops. This type of pottery. It might have been more common back then. It's a small tray of the old settlers' china, and drew back the olive satin curtains with their shimmering blue lining that hung in front of the three tall windows. Monsieur has well slept this morning, he said, smiling. What o'clock is it, Victor? Asked Dorian Gray drowsily. It's like he sleeps a lot, and I've experienced some turbulence in my own life recently, and I think like that's like the body's response to like a very stressful or traumatic event. Like, you start sleeping a lot longer. You might sleep in until like noon or something, and this happens to depressed people too, where they'll like sleep, like they'll find it extremely hard to get out of bed or some stuff like that. Sleep is like it's like a refuge in a way. It's like your body is able to be at peace, as is your mind. And it's like in this case, Dorian's recovering from a breakup that he had with Sybil, so he's like sleeping in until noon. He's like, am I still here on Earth? Yes, Dorian, you are. 1 hour and a quarter, monsieur. 1:15. So yeah, 1:15 in the afternoon. He wakes up. How late it was. He sat up and, having sipped some tea, turned over his letters. One of them was from Lord Henry, and had been brought by hand that morning. He hesitated for a moment, and then put it aside. The others he opened listlessly. They contained the usual collection of cards, invitations to dinner, tickets for private views, programs of charity, concerts, and the like that are showered on fashionable young men every morning during the season. I guess like our modern equivalent would be like your junk mail. Like your invitation, your credit card invitation. Or, maybe your letter from the local car dealership. It's like, oh, great. He's like rips them all up. Hey, Board Fox, how are you doing today? Okay, and you're just in time, Board Fox. We're in chapter 8 already of Dorian. Yeah. And Dorian just broke up with Sybil, so he's experiencing a lot of turmoil. Dorian is. During the season, May through July, the traditional time for society events in London. It's like springtime and early summer. I think that's the busy season practically everywhere. And it's like winter's the slow time. It's like spring and summer is like when everything's speeding up, like romance, etc., societal events. And then winter time, like fall and winter time, everything starts to like creep to a crawl, especially in places where it snows. Okay. There was a rather heavy bill for a chased silver Louis Quinze. That's an elaborate 18th century decorative style named for French King Louis XV. It was a toilet set that he had not yet had the courage to send on to his guardians, who were extremely old-fashioned people and did not realize that we live in an age when unnecessary things are our only necessities. And there were several very courteously worded communications from German Street moneylenders offering to advance any sum of money at a moment's notice and at the most reasonable rates of interest. It's like banks and loans. Like, I think that's the reason why we had the 2008 financial crisis. It's like some people they just want to do whatever they can to get a buck, and it's like, sure, we're willing to loan you $5 with interest, and then they can make money off of people who are borrowing money. Greed. Okay, alright, Border Fox. All good. Thank you for watching the show, even for a short time. Okay. I might be able to show you the style. The style plate that it's referring to. Yeah, it's a style based around King Louis XV, Louis the Beloved. And this is saying it's like a toilet set. Alright, maybe I could show you Board Fox and whoever else is watching. It's like that. Like, we would call them like old style. Like, you might see it in like, I don't know, like a royal palace or something. Maybe some types of ships like the Titanic or something would have had stuff of that style. I think it connotes wealth. Like, rich people can afford that kind of stuff in their house. Okay, yeah, he's got a toilet seat that looks like that. After about 10 minutes, he got up and, throwing on an elaborate dressing gown of silk embroidered cashmere wool, passed into the onyx paved bathroom. The cool water refreshed him after his long sleep. He seemed to have forgotten all that he had gone through. It's like he woke up a new man. A dim sense of having taken part in some strange tragedy came to him once or twice. But there was the unreality of a dream about it. Like, was I dreaming? Was all that horrible stuff that I experienced real? Yeah, again, like, I think some people may have this after some types of traumatic events. It's like, you sleep a long time, you wake up, and you wondered if it was a dream. It was so horrible what happened. As soon as he was dressed, he went to the library and sat down to a light French breakfast that had been laid out for him on a small round table close to the open window. It was an exquisite day. Yeah, in this case, Dorian was the cause of the problem. The warm air seemed laden with spices. A bee flew in and buzzed round the blue dragon bowl that, filled with sulphury yellow roses, stood before him. He felt perfectly happy. Suddenly, his eye fell on the screen that he had placed in front of the portrait, and he started. Ah, yes, I think he actually covered it up last time. Like, I made a reference to Edgar Allan Poe yesterday. It's like, the beating of the hideous heart, but for him it's the portrait. He, like, covers it up so he doesn't have to see it. Again, the expression of the portrait has changed to, like, a wicked grin or something. And yeah, he's covering it up because he's like, I don't want to see it. Yeah, he does not want to see that. Yeah, I guess another equivalent would be like sweeping it under the rug or something like that. It's like the elephant in the room. He is the elephant in the room. Yeah, he started. Too cold for monsieur? Asked his valet, putting an omelette on the table. I shut the window. Yeah, I guess the slight breeze, maybe. What's strange is that it says the warm air seemed laden with spices in the previous paragraph. Yeah, and then he said the valet says that he shuts the window. So I'm thinking that that could be because he thinks the breeze might be making it colder. Yeah, maybe it's the breeze or something that he thinks might be there. Suddenly his eye fell on the screen. Dorian shook his head. "I'm not cold," he murmured. Was it all true? Had the portrait really changed? Or had it been simply his own imagination that had made him see a look of evil where there had been a look of joy? Surely a painted canvas could not alter. The thing was absurd. It would serve as a tale to tell Basil someday. It would make him smile. He could always ask the valet. Like, why doesn't he? He's like, can you? If he's like, hey, what's his name? Victor? Yeah, Victor. He's like, Victor, I could have swore that this painting changed. I could have swore I saw it change yesterday. Can you take a look at it for me? And then if Victor also says that he sees the expression of malice, then he knows that it's not just in his head. He knows it's not just his imagination running away with him. But he can also undergo some self-reflection, right? Like, if it is only his perception, what things has he done that makes him feel that that's the case? Like, is his conscience trying to tell him something? And yet how vivid was his recollection of the whole thing. First in the dim twilight, and then in the bright dawn, he had seen the touch of cruelty round the warped lips. He almost dreaded his valet leaving the room. He knew that when he was alone, he would have to examine the portrait. He was afraid of certainty. It's like, why wait until he leaves? I would say. Is he afraid or ashamed of something? When the coffee and cigarettes had been brought and the man turned to go, he felt a wild desire to tell him to remain. As the door was closing behind him, he called him back. The man stood waiting for his orders. Dorian looked at him for a moment. "I am not at home to anyone, Victor," he said with a sigh. The man bowed and retired. He's like, I don't want any guests right now. Then he rose from the table, lit a cigarette, and flung himself down on a luxuriously cushioned couch that stood facing the screen. The screen was an old one of gilt Spanish leather, stamped and wrought with a rather florid Louis XIV, I believe Louis XIV pattern. He scanned it curiously, wondering if ever before it had concealed the secret of a man's life. Should he move it aside, after all? Why not let it stay there? What was the use of knowing? If the thing was true, it was terrible. If it was not true, why trouble about it? But what if, by some fate, or deadlier chance, eyes other than his spied behind and saw the horrible change? What should he do if Basil Hallward came and asked to look at his own picture? Basil would be sure to do that. No. The thing had to be examined, and at once. Anything would be better than this dreadful state of doubt. And yeah, as I said yesterday, this does kind of remind me a little bit of the movie Oculus. It's like, once you look at it, you might go crazy. In that case, it was a mirror. In this case, it's the painting. And it's like he's like having these internal dialogues about the painting. where it's like, why not just invite other people to look at it? Worst case scenario, they'll just confirm what you've already noticed, that the painting itself has changed. It might create a discussion. Basil may help you come to the heart of the matter. And actually, Basil might have some really good insight about it. Like, he is the artist after all. He got up and locked both doors. At least he'd be alone when he looked upon the mask of his shame. Then he drew the screen aside and saw himself face to face. It was perfectly true. The portrait had altered. So, if he was hallucinating before, he is still hallucinating. If it had changed in reality, it has still changed. It is still changed. Nothing new has happened other than the fact that it changed to reflect the circumstance. As he often remembered afterward, and always with no small wonder, he found himself at first gazing at the portrait with a feeling of almost scientific interest. That such a change should have taken place was incredible. That such a small change should have taken place was incredible to him. And yet it was a fact. Was there some subtle affinity between the chemical atoms that shape themselves into form and color on the canvas, and the soul that was within him? Could it be that what the soul thought, they realized? That what it dreamed, they made true? Or was there some other, more terrible reason? He shuddered and felt afraid, and going back to the couch, lay there gazing at the picture in sickened horror. One thing, however, he felt that it had done for him. It had made him conscious how unjust, how cruel he had been to Sybil Vane. It's like she was wishing that it just would not end. And Dorian was very resolute. He was like, no, it's over. Now that I've seen you act badly, our affair is through. Seems very kind of superficial in a way. Very, definitely abrupt, yeah. It was not too late to make reparation for that. As I said yesterday, hopefully she's willing to take you back after that whole affair, after that whole episode. She could still be his wife. His unreal and selfish love would yield to him some higher influence, would be transformed into some nobler passion, and the portrait that Basil Hallward had painted of him would be a guide to him through life. Would be to him what holiness is to some, and conscience to others, and fear of God to us all. It's like some mistakes you can try to fix them, but yeah, some mistakes you just can't correct. You can't right it. This may be one of those times where something like Sybil may be like, you were a cruel brute, and my brother is coming to whoop you. There were opiates for remorse, drugs that could lull the moral sense to sleep. But there was a visible symbol of the degradation of sin. But here was a visible symbol of the degradation of sin. Here was an ever-present sign of the ruin men brought upon their souls. If only it wasn't always that way. If only it was always that way. If only we had some way of seeing the effects we've had on the world around us in a simple visual representation. Like a painting or a drawing. It's like I really want to know the impact I've had, and I can just look at this this picture. Oh yeah, if only it was that easy. If only it was that simple. I guess we can by looking back on our accomplishments and achievements and stuff like that, but it's not quite the same. It's not quite so simplified as it is here. He did not know. Yeah, let's see, where was I? 3 o'clock struck, and 4, and the half hour rang its double chime. But Dorian Gray did not stir. He was trying to gather up the scarlet threads of life, and to weave them into a pattern, to find his way through the sanguine labyrinth of passion through which he was wandering. He did not know what to do or what to think. Finally, he went over to the table and wrote a passionate letter to the girl he loved, imploring her forgiveness, and accusing himself of madness. He covered page after page with wild words of sorrow, and wilder words of pain. There is a luxury in self-reproach. When we blame ourselves, we feel that no one else has a right to blame us. It is the confession, not the priest, that gives us absolution. I briefly described yesterday the process of seeking absolution for one's sins. Here, Oscar Wilde explains that it's the act of saying sorry, apologizing, seeking forgiveness that gives you freedom, and not the priest. And I would actually agree with Oscar Wilde here. I think it's what you say and what you do, not what other people qualify, that gives you that power. When Dorian Gray had finished the letter, he felt that he had been forgiven. It's like, if something bothers you, just write it down. Suddenly there came a knock at the door, and he had heard Lord Henry's voice outside. "My dear boy, I must see you. Let me in at once. I can't bear you shutting yourself up like this." Yeah, I was hoping we'd hear from Lord Henry. That dude's always a voice of reason. He made no answer at first, but remained quite still. The knocking still continued and grew louder. Yes, it was better to let Lord Henry in, and to explain to him the new life he was going to lead, to quarrel with him if it became necessary to quarrel, to part if parting was inevitable. He jumped up, drew the screen hastily across the picture, and unlocked the door. Again, it's like, why is he covering it up? What would be the main problem with letting Lord Henry see it? I guess in a way, it's also kind of like them seeing his own mistakes. It's like, how much of our own mistakes do we really want other people to see? Kind of thing. And yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, maybe it is something to be ashamed of. I don't know. "I'm sorry for it all, Dorian," said Lord Henry as he entered, "but you must not think too much about it." "Do you mean about Sybil Vane?" asked the lad. "Yes, of course," answered Lord Henry, sinking into a chair and slowly pulling off his yellow gloves. He must have heard it through the grapevine. "It is dreadful from one point of view, but it was not your fault. Tell me, did you go behind and see her after the play was over?" "Yes." "I felt sure you had. Did you make a scene with her?" "I was brutal, Harry. Perfectly brutal. But it is all right now. I am not sorry for anything that has happened. It has taught me to know myself better." "Ah, Dorian, I'm so glad that you take it in that way. I was afraid I would find you plunged in remorse, in tearing that nice curly hair of yours. It's like pulling your hair out, or that Vincent van Gogh painting. It's like the one where the guy's like this. At Eternity's Gate, I think is the name of it. It's like, I thought I was going to find you like that guy. All hope abandoned. "I've got through all that," said Dorian, shaking his head and smiling. "I'm perfectly happy now. I know what conscience is, to begin with. It is not what you told me it was. It is the divinest thing in us. Don't sneer at it, Harry, anymore. At least not before me. I want to be good. I can't bear the idea of my soul being hideous." Cue that song. Let's see, what's the song I'm thinking of? "I'll be good, And I'll love the world like I should. It's like a, yeah. What is it, James? I'll Be Good by James Young. Yeah, there you go. That's the song I was thinking of. I'll be good, I'll be good. And I'll love the world like I should. Dorian saying. Trying to recover from his crime, or make up for his crime. If we could even call it a crime. Maybe we could, maybe we can't, I don't know. A very charming artistic basis for ethics, Dorian. I congratulate you on it, but how are you going to begin? By marrying Sybil Vane. Marrying Sybil Vane? Cried Lord Henry, standing up and looking at him in perplexed amazement. Again, like, if she takes you back. If she doesn't take you back, you're right back at square zero. Which, I don't know, wouldn't be a complete tragedy for Dorian. As we know, he's pretty good looking. It probably would not be very difficult at all for him to find someone else. Yeah. In perplexed amazement. But my dear Dorian, yes, Harry, I know what you're going to say. Something dreadful about marriage. Don't say it. Don't ever say things of that kind to me again. 2 days ago I asked Sybil to marry me. I'm not going to break my word to her. She is to be my wife. All this has happened over the course of 2 days? I think the engagement has been longer than that. Your wife, Dorian. Didn't you get my letter? I wrote to you this morning and sent the note down by my own man. Your letter? Oh yes, I remember. I've not read it yet, Harry. I was afraid there might be something in it that I wouldn't like. You cut life to pieces with your epigrams. I know, and it's freaking awesome when he does it too. You know nothing then. What do you mean? Lord Henry walked across the room and, sitting down by Dorian Gray, took both his hands in his own and held them tightly. Dorian, he said, my letter, don't be frightened, was to tell you that Sybil Vane is dead. What? Did she really pull a Juliet and kill herself when Romeo died? Did she take her life as lovers often do? Maybe she did. Maybe she did. She pulled a Juliet. I guess in Juliet's case, she died because Romeo died. She was still... She killed her... I can't remember which one killed himself first, Romeo or Juliet. It's like... Yeah, Juliet finds Romeo. She thinks he's dead. She kills herself. Yeah, she kills... Like, one of them is pretending to be dead. The other one finds out, kills himself in response. And the original one wakes up, finds the other one's dead, and then kills himself in response. Okay. But yeah, Sybil Vane died. A cry of pain broke from the lad's lips, and he leaped to his feet, tearing his hand away from Lord Henry's grasp. Dead? Sybil dead? It is not true. It is a horrible lie. How dare you say it? It's like, oh gosh. And now Dorian's gonna be bearing that cross for the rest of his freaking life. It's quite true, Dorian, said Lord Henry gravely. It is in all the morning papers. I wrote down to you to ask you not to see anyone till I came. There will have to be an inquest, of course, and you must not be mixed up in it. Things like that make a man fashionable in Paris, but in London people are so prejudiced. Here one should never make one's debut with a scandal. One should reserve that to give an interest to one's old age. I suppose they don't know your name at the theater. If they don't, it's all right. Did anyone see you going around to a room? That's an important point. It's like the first suspect is always the boyfriend, or the ex-boyfriend, the husband, the wife. That's usually the first suspect. Dorian did not answer for a few moments. He was dazed with horror. Finally, he stammered in a stifled voice. Harry, did you say an inquest? What did you mean by that? Did Sybil... Oh, Harry, I can't bear it. But be quick. Tell me everything at once. Yeah, I kind of feel bad for Dorian here. He, like, breaks up with her, she dies, and now they're gonna try to get him for murder. I have no doubt that it was not an accident, Dorian. Though it must be put in that way to the public. It seems that as she was leaving the theater with her mother, about 12:30 or so, she said she'd forgotten something upstairs. They waited some time for her, but she did not come down again. They ultimately found her lying dead on the floor of her dressing room. She had swallowed something by mistake, some dreadful thing they use at theaters. I don't know what it was, but it had either prussic acid, that's poisonous solution of hydrogen cyanide, or white lead in it. I should fancy it was pure prussic acid, and she seems to have died instantaneously. Yeah, I don't know why she would eat that, but okay. Harry, it's terrible, cried the lad. Yes, it is very tragic, of course, but you must not get yourself mixed up in it. I see by the standard that she was 17. I should have thought she was almost younger than that. She looked such a child and seemed to know so little about acting. Dorian, you mustn't let this thing get on your nerves. You must come and dine with me, and afterward we will look in at the opera. It is a Patty night, and everyone will be there. Adelina Patty, she existed from 1843 to 1919. Famous Spanish soprano. You can come to my sister's box. She's got some smart women with her. Smart women. So I murdered Sybil Vane, said Dorian Gray half to himself. Murdered her as surely as if I'd cut her little throat with a knife. Yet the roses are not less lovely for all that. The birds sing just as happily in my garden. And tonight I need to dine with you, and then go on to the opera. And sub somewhere, I suppose, afterward. How extraordinarily dramatic life is. If I'd read all this in a book, Harry, I think I would have wept over it. Somehow, now that it's happened actually, and to me, it seems far too wonderful for tears. Here is the first passionate love letter I've ever written in my life. It's strange that it's to a dead person. Strange that my first passionate love letter should have been addressed to a dead girl. And that's what it says in the book. Can they feel? I wonder, those white silent people we call the dead. Sybil, can she feel or know or listen? I think the answer is no, Dorian. Not unless you believe in ghosts. Oh, Harry, how I loved her once. It seems years ago to me now. She was everything to me. Then came that dreadful night. Was it really only last night? When she played so badly and my heart almost broke. She explained it all to me. It was terribly pathetic, but I was not moved a bit. I thought her shallow. Suddenly something happened that made me afraid. I can't tell you what it was, but it was terrible. I said I would go back to her. I felt I had done wrong. And now she is dead. My God, Harry, what shall I do? You don't know the danger I'm in, and there's nothing to keep me straight. She would have done that for me. She had no right to kill herself. It was selfish of her. Come on, Dorian. It's like don't treat someone like dirt and then they kill themselves and then you blame the person that killed themselves for killing themselves. It's like you know, it's okay to assume some responsibility, you know. Yeah, it's okay to assume some responsibility. Like you don't need to pin it all on the dead person. That's something that a schmuck would do. And you're better than that, Dorian. Come on, dude. My dear Dorian, answered Lord Henry, taking a cigarette from his case and producing a gold Latin matchbox. Latin's a gold, brass-like metal alloy pounded into thin sheets. The only way a woman can ever reform a man is by boring him so completely that he loses all possible interest in life. Lord Henry again with the freaking truth bombs. If you had married this girl, you'd have been wretched. Of course you would have treated her kindly. One can always be kind to people about whom one cares nothing. But you would have soon found out that you were absolutely indifferent to her. And when a woman finds out about her husband, she either becomes dreadfully dowdy or wears very smart bonnets. that some other woman's husband has to pay for. I say nothing about the social mistake, which would have been abject, which of course I would not have allowed, but I assure you that in any case, the whole thing would have been an absolute failure. And it's like Lord Henry's just like, she's gonna wear you down. She's gonna wear you down, and then after you've been wear down from the years of subtle abuse and constant nagging and all the years of being a whipping boy, yes dear, no dear, then she's gonna be able to mold you into her perfect man. You would have been a shell of your former self. This is why I tell people to never get married. They lose their individuality. They lose their independence. Okay. Let's see. I suppose it would, muttered the lad, walking up and down the room and looking horribly pale. But I thought it was my duty. It's not my fault that this terrible tragedy has prevented my doing what was right. I remember your saying once that there is a fatality about good resolutions, that they're always made too late. Mine certainly were. It's like I sometimes say, it's better to not make a mistake or to try to avoid making a mistake than to make a mistake and then try making it up after the fact. It's almost always easier to avoid making a mistake in the first place. If you can help it. You can't always help it. Sometimes it's just like an accident, or you didn't have all the information at the time, so you just made the best decision that you thought you could at the time. But yeah, it's like if you have the ability to avoid the mistake, it's almost always better to avoid it than to try making up for the mistake after the fact. Because as Dorian points out here, and I would agree, you can't always make it up. You can't always make up the assignment. Good resolutions are useless attempts to interfere with scientific laws. Their origin is pure vanity. Their result is absolutely nil. They give us, now and then, some of these luxurious, sterile emotions that have a certain charm for the weak. That is all that can be said for them. They're simply checks that men draw on a bank where they have no account. Ouch. Lord Henry. They're blank checks that people can't cash. I'm telling you, Lord Henry's such a cynic. Harry, cried Dorian Gray, coming over and sitting down beside him. Why is it that I cannot feel this tragedy as much as I want to? I don't think I'm heartless, do you? You've done too many foolish things during the last fortnight to be entitled to give yourself that name, Dorian, answered Lord Henry with his sweet, melancholy smile. And there's just, it's like, there's just like a sweet sadness in Lord Henry's character. It's like he's been let down so many times. He's a lot in common with James Vane, as a matter of fact. It's like life has just let him down so many times. He's like, I've been through all this drivel before. He's like, I've seen it all. There's almost nothing we can look forward to. Every day is the same. There is no love here and there is no pain. 9 Inch Nails reference, by the way. The lad frowned. I don't like that explanation, Harry, he rejoined, but I'm glad you don't think I'm heartless. I'm nothing of the kind. I know I'm not. There's like a saying, it's like, don't attribute to malice what can instead be attributed to foolishness. Like, what's the saying? Yeah, don't attribute to malice. It's called Hanlon's razor, which can be adequately explained by stupidity. So that's what Lord Henry's invoking here. He's like, they were just mistakes. You're not a jerk. You just did some stupid stuff. A fool in love. That's all you were. And yet I must admit that this thing that has happened does not affect me as it should. It seems to me to be simply like a wonderful ending to a wonderful play. It is all the terrible beauty of a Greek tragedy, a tragedy in which I took a great part, but by which I have not been wounded. It's an interesting question, said Lord Henry, who found an exquisite pleasure in playing on the lad's unconscious egotism. An extremely interesting question. I fancy that the true explanation is this. It often happens that the real tragedies of life occur in such an inartistic manner that they hurt us by their crude violence, their absolute incoherence, their absurd want of meaning, their entire lack of style. I guess like a good comparison would be like a train wreck. It's like they don't all like bad, like horrible tragedies like that don't always have a rational explanation. I guess like the modern equivalent would also be like mass shootings, stuff like that. It's like they don't always have a rash explanation. They affect us just as vulgarity affects us. They give us an impression of sheer brute force, and we revolt against that. I guess it could also apply to natural disasters like the condo collapsing in Miami. Like it doesn't always, like sometimes, like what Lord Henry's saying here. It's just raw violence and or destruction. Like they don't need to have artistic elements about them, these events. Sometimes, however, a tragedy that possesses artistic elements of beauty crosses our lives. Okay, so now here Lord Henry's going to talk about the alternative. If these elements of beauty are real, the whole thing simply appeals to our sense of dramatic effect. Suddenly we find that we are no longer the actors, but the spectators of the play. Or rather, we are both. We watch ourselves, and the mere wonder of the spectacle enthralls us. In the present case, what is it that has really happened? Someone has killed herself for love of you. I wish that I had ever such an experience. Lord Henry's like, someone killed themselves over you. Must be nice. Yeah, he's a forever lonely soul. It would have made me in love with love for the rest of my life. And again, that's another similarity, another commonality, something he shares with James Vane. Both of them have not found love in life. Lord Henry and James Vane. The people who have adored me, there have not been very many, but there have been some, have always insisted on living on, long after I had ceased to care for them, or they to care for me. It's like they could live without his love, basically. They become stout and tedious. When I meet them, they go in at once for reminiscences. That awful memory of woman. What a fearful thing it is, and what an utter intellectual stagnation it reveals. One should absorb the color of life, but one should never remember its details. Details are always vulgar. Like Lord Henry, he just has some of the most fascinating ideas. It's like it's like spare, cue Robert Downey Jr. You can spare the details, the rocks and the nails. Just focus on, Robert Downey Jr. referenced their details of the song. It's like, let's focus instead on that REM song, Imitation of Life. It's like that sugar cane, that lemonade. It's like the sensations. I must sow poppies, symbolic of oblivion because opiates are derived from them. Pretty dang fascinating. Sighed Dorian. There is no necessity, rejoined his companion. Life has always poppies in her hands. Of course, now and then things linger. I once wore nothing but violets all through one season, as a form of artistic mourning for a romance that would not die. Ultimately, however, it did die. I forget what killed it. I think it was her proposing to sacrifice the whole world for me. That is always a dreadful moment. It fills one with the terror of eternity. Well, would you believe it? A week ago, at Lady Hampshire's, I found myself seated at dinner next to the lady in question, and she insisted on going over the whole thing again and digging up the past and raking up the furniture, raking up the future. It's like, she's like, this whole world can burn. I just want to be in love with you. He's like, okay, lady, I'm getting out of here. It's like, cuckoo. I had buried my romance in a bed of asphodel. That's flower that is symbolic of death. Another James Young reference. I buried my love for you. And yeah, he's singing it to this lady that says everything else. She could flush everything else, but she has to have Lord Henry. She dragged it out again and assured me that I had spoiled her life. I am bound to state that she ate an enormous dinner, so I did not feel any anxiety. But what a lack of taste she showed. The one charm of the past is that it's the past. Yeah, like if there's a character in here that's after my heart, it's definitely Lord Henry. It's like, let's leave the past in the past. That's the one good thing about it, is that it's behind us. But women never know when the curtain is fallen. They always want a sixth act. And as soon as the interest of the play is entirely over, they propose to continue it. If they were allowed their own way, every comedy would have a tragic ending and every tragedy would culminate in a farce. They are charmingly artificial, but they have no sense of art. You are more fortunate than I am. I assure you, Dorian, that not one of the women I have known would have done for me what Sybil Vane did for you. I'd say that's a better reflection on you, Lord Henry, than it is on Dorian. Because it shows that the people that you love are more rational and grounded. They're not so... what's the expression? They're not so fixed on one outcome that they're willing to kill themselves if it doesn't go that way. Like, to me, that's, like, very extreme. Like, when people are like that. Ordinary women always console themselves. Some of them do it by going in for sentimental colors. Never trust a woman who wears mauve. That's an extremely popular color in Victorian England. I believe it's purple in color. Whatever her age may be, or a woman over 35 who is fond of pink ribbons, it always means that they have history. Others find a great consolation in suddenly discovering the good qualities of their husbands. They flaunt their conjugal felicity in one's face, as if it were the most fascinating of sins. Religion consoles some. Its mysteries have all the charm of a flirtation, a woman once told me, and I can quite understand it. Besides, nothing makes one so vain as being told that one is a sinner. Conscience makes egotists of us all, yet there is really no end to the consolations that women find in modern life. Indeed, I have not mentioned the most important one. What is that, Harry? Said the lad listlessly. Oh, the obvious consolation. Taking someone else's admirer when one loses one's own. Yeah, in good society that's always whitewashes a woman. But really, Dorian, how different Sybil Vane must have been from all the women one meets. There's something to me quite beautiful about her death. I'm glad I'm living in a century where such wonders happen. They make one believe in the reality of the things we all play with, such as romance, passion, and love. I was terribly cruel to her. You forget that. I'm afraid that women appreciate cruelty, downright cruelty, more than anything else. They have wonderfully primitive instincts. We have emancipated them, but they remain slaves looking for their masters all the same. They love being dominated. I'm sure you were splendid. I've never seen you really and absolutely angry, but I can fancy how delightful you looked. And after all, you said something to me the day before yesterday that seemed to me at the time to be merely fanciful, but that I see now was absolutely true, and holds the key to everything. What was that, Harry? You said to me that Sybil Vane represented to you all the heroines of romance, that she was Desdemona one night and Ophelia the other, that if she died as Juliet, she came to life as Imogen. She will never come to life again now, muttered the lad, burying his face in his hands. No, she will never come to life. She's played her part. her last part. But you must think of that lonely death in the tawdry dressing room simply as a strange lurid fragment from some Jacobean tragedy, as a wonderful scene from Webster or Ford or Cyril Tourneur, Desdemona's father in Shakespeare's Othello. The girl never really lived, and so she's never really died. To you at least she was always a dream, a phantom that flitted through Shakespeare's plays and left them lovelier for its presence, a read through which Shakespeare's music sounded richer and more full of joy. The moment she touched actual life, she married it, and it married her, and so she passed away. Mournful Ophelia, if you like, put ashes on your head because Cordelia was strangled. Cry out against heaven because the daughter of Brabantio died. Brabantio is actually Desdemona's father. But don't waste your tears over Sybil Vane. She was less real than they are. It's like, she was always acting shows, so she never really lived, is Lord Henry's rationalization. There was a silence. The evening darkened in the room. Noiselessly and with silver feet, the shadows crept in from the garden. The colors faded wearily out of things. After some time, Dorian Gray looked up. "You've explained me to myself, Harry," he murmured, with something of a sigh of relief. "I felt all that you said, but somehow I was afraid of it, and I could not express it to myself." Last couple pages in the chapter. "How well you know me, but we will not talk again of what's happened. It has been a marvelous experience, that is all. I wonder if life has still in store for me everything is marvelous." "Life has everything in store for you, Dorian. There is nothing that you, with your extraordinary good looks, will not be able to do." It's like the Ryan Reynolds effect. It's like, the world is yours. "But suppose, Harry, I became haggard and old and wrinkled. What then?" "Ah, then," said Lord Henry, rising to go. "Then, my dear Dorian, you would have to fight for your victories. As it is, they are brought to you. No, you must keep your good looks. We live in an age that reads too much to be wise, and that thinks too much to be beautiful. We cannot spare you, and now you had better dress and drive down to the club. We're rather late as it is. I think I shall go with you to the opera, Harry. I feel too tired to eat anything. What is the number of your sister's box?" 27, I believe. "It's on the grand tier. You'll see her name on the door. But I'm sorry you won't come and dine." "I don't feel up to it," said Dorian listlessly, "but I am awfully obliged to you for all that you've said to me. You are certainly my best friend. No one has ever understood me as you have." Lord Henry and Dorian definitely have a special relationship. "We are only at the beginning of our friendship, Dorian," answered Lord Henry, shaking him by the hand. "Goodbye. I shall see you before 9:30, I hope. Remember, Patty is singing." As he closed the door behind him, Dorian Gray touched the bell, and in a few minutes Victor appeared with the lamps and drew the blinds down. He waited impatiently for him to go. The man seemed to take an interminable time over everything. As soon as he had left, he rushed to the screen and drew it back. No, there was no further change in the picture. It had received the news of Sybil Vane's death before he had known of it himself. It was conscious of the events of life as they occurred. The vicious cruelty that marred the fine lines in the mouth had, no doubt, appeared at the very moment that the girl had drunk the poison, whatever it was. Or was it indifferent to results? Did it merely take cognizance of what had passed within the soul? He wondered and hoped that some day he would see the change taking place before his eyes, shuddering as he hoped it. Yeah, it's like he won't be able to fix the mistake now. He can try to improve. He can try to improve the expression of the painting by performing what are known as like virtues, good acts in the community. But yeah, we'll see. The vicious cruelty. Poor Sybil. What a romance it had all been. She had often mimicked death on the stage. Then death himself had touched her and taken her with him. How had she played that dreadful last scene? Had she cursed him as she died? No. She had died for love of him, and love would always be a sacrament to him now. She had atoned for everything by the sacrifice she had made for her life. He would not think any more of what she had made him go through on that horrible night at the theater. When he thought of her, it would be as a wonderful tragic figure sent onto the world stage to show the supreme reality of love. a wonderful tragic figure. Tears came to his eyes as he remembered her childlike look, and winsome fanciful ways and shy tremulous grace. He brushed them away hastily and looked again at the picture. He felt that the time had really come for making his choice, or had his choice already been made? Yes, life had decided that for him, life and his own infinite curiosity about life. Eternal youth, infinite passion, pleasures subtle and secret, wild joys and wilder sins. He was to have all these things. The portrait was to bear the burden of his shame, that was all. A feeling of pain crept over him as he thought of the desecration that was in store for the fair face on the canvas. Once in boyish mockery of Narcissus, he had kissed it, or feigned to kiss, those painted lips that now smiled so cruelly at him. Morning after morning he had sat before the portrait, wondering at its beauty, almost enamored of it, as it seemed to him at times. Was it to alter now with every mood to which he yielded? Was it to become a monstrous and loathsome thing, to be hidden away in a locked room, to be shut out from the sunlight that had so often touched her brighter gold the waving wonder of its hair? The pity of it, the pity of it. Again, I think Dorian needs to ask Basil what his opinion is. He is the painter, after all. For a moment, he thought of praying that the horrible sympathy that existed between him and the picture might cease. It had changed in answer to a prayer. Perhaps an answer to a prayer might remain unchanged. And yet, who that knew anything about life would surrender the chance of remaining always young? However fantastic that chance might be, or with what fateful consequence it might be fraught. Besides, was it really under his control? Had it indeed been prayer that had produced the substitution? Might there not be some curious scientific reason for it all? If thought could exercise its influence upon a living organism, might not thought exercise an influence upon dead and inorganic things? Yeah, I would say so. It's like the painting is not a living thing, and it's changed. So, who knows? Nay, without thought or conscious desire, might not things external to ourselves vibrate in unison with our moods and passions, atom calling to atom in secret love or strange affinity? But the reason was of no importance. He would never again tempt by prayer any terrible power. If the picture was to alter, it was to alter. That was all. He said, let the pieces fall where they may. Why inquire too closely into it? For there would be a real pleasure in watching it. He'd be able to follow his mind into its secret places. This portrait would be to him the most magical of mirrors. As it had revealed to him his own body, so it would reveal to him his own soul. And when winter came upon it, he would still be standing where spring trembles on the verge of summer. When the blood crept from his face and left behind a pallid mask of chalk with leaden eyes, he would keep the glamour of boyhood. Not one blossom of his loveliness would ever fade. Not one pulse of his life would ever weaken. Like the gods of the Greeks, he would be strong and fleet and joyous. What did it matter what happened to the colored image on canvas? He would be safe. That was everything. Yeah, unless James Vane gets a hold of you. And once he finds out his sister died, he's probably gonna come for you. He drew the screen back into its former place in front of the picture, smiling as he did so. He passed into his bedroom, where his valet was already waiting for him. An hour later, he was at the opera, and Lord Henry was leaning over his chair. Okay, so that'll be chapter 9. Chapter 8, we got a chance to get an insight into Dorian's first reactions surrounding his breakup to Sybil, his original remorse, his reaction also to Lord Henry's news that Sybil Vane had died. It seems like he's not as sorrowful or sorry, I think, as he could be. And I think that's the reason why the painting hasn't changed. We'll have to wait and see what actually happens with that painting. Will he start doing good things to make the painting change? Will he keep committing acts of cruelty to make it look like, Quasimodo? Tune in next time on Picture of Dorian Gray. Thank you for watching.